Before we get started with today's interview, just a quick reminder, click the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe and ding the bell so that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we have coming up. Now, on to today's interview. Welcome back, everybody. Today, my guest is legendary composer Catherine Rollin. I am so excited to speak with you today. Thank you, Catherine, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So today, I want to start off by talking a little bit about you as a composer and your journey as a musician and as a composer. So let me learn a little bit about your family background. Do you come from a musical family?
Yes, I do, very much so. My parents, neither of them were professionals, but my mother had studied piano through the age of 16. My father wasn't able as a child to take any lessons, but always loved music passionately. And at age 40, he started taking violin lessons. But the thing that I think was very specific to them both was that they both played by ear. My mother, although she had studied and she studied to the level of playing like Chopin waltzes and all, she basically had just a natural talent for playing by ear. I think that the most distinctive thing they did, besides my father playing records, because in that time we had record players, and he had hundreds of records, and he played records many hours a day. So there was always music going on, but what I was going to say is very distinctive is that once he started his violin lessons, he would pull my mother over to the piano, and they would just do a lot of things where she just played the piano part by ear. And those became family musicales. So as a little kid, I always was sitting by the piano. And then as soon as I was old enough, my sister was older than me, so she started doing some of the accompanying too. And I did some of the accompanying. And so we all played by ear and were able to hear the chord changes and that sort of thing.
So you were completely immersed from all sides. There's music playing all the time. Both of your parents played, your older sibling played. So you had some amazing role models for you, and you were just exposed to it all the time. I love that. That's awesome. Very cool. When did you start lessons?
I didn't start lessons till I was 7. And I already had been playing by ear, and my biggest debut was when my older sister was taking lessons and playing for Elise. And when I was in kindergarten, I just played it by ear. And so they thought that deserved a concert for the first graders. So I went into the first grade class, and it was my first command performance playing for Elise by ear. When I started lessons, reading was not even a major issue to me. Like I thought, well, big deal. I can sort of do whatever the teacher does. Now, as much as I think it's very important to become a great reader. But initially, I think in some ways it was really something that eventually led me on my road and journey to being a composer, because I would pick up things by ear, make my own little changes. But then the more I was immersed in doing some little reading, but always adding in my own little changes, I think that sort of really got me on the road to my ear getting more and more refined and more able to take me on journeys of my own than in composing.
Oh, I love how that you just perfectly laid the groundwork for what was to come later in terms of your composing. And who nurtured you as a composer?
My piano teacher from the age of 11 through 18 was the Detroit Symphony pianist. His name was Misha Kotler, and he was just an amazing, amazing musician. I feel like he, again, a lot by ear, formed my musical values, because he would sit at his piano and play and say, sound like this. He wasn't a typical pedagogue, but because he was such a fine musician, he was a wonderful role model. And I think when you say nurturing, I just started writing some melodies, and just one time we always had our lessons on the weekend, and I was at a lesson and I said, what do you think of this? And I just played him something. And he said, that's really good. And he said, did you write that? I said, yes, I wrote that. Anyway, just to say he was highly critical person. So it was really, it was very tough to get a compliment from him. And it was very old school. He, though, loved this melody. And the next weekend he said, I want you to play it again. And Mrs. Kotler said she was singing that all week. It was stuck in her mind. That was his wife. And so that was just the first experience because I respected him so much and I knew how critical he was. And so I just started thinking, well, I like this, but it wasn't something like, oh, I must become a composer. It was just a possibility if I went to music school.
Talk to me a little bit about your path through music school and through college.
The way I was raised was so much more not music driven by career, but music driven by love. And so I think that my family didn't really think of it as really a super practical pursuit as much as they did this for hours almost every day in our house, but they weren't thinking of it as a career. But basically, I just decided this is what I'm the best at. So why shouldn't I try this? But I basically really thought that I would come into the music school and just see what I thought. And I thought that I might major in composition, but I didn't know that for sure either. So I auditioned thinking I was going to be a piano performance principal. And I said theory was going to be my major. And I do remember though, because I had a very nice audition and I remember, but he was very complimentary of my playing. So I thought, well, maybe I could do piano. It was that kind of thing. And I did take an intro to creative composition. And I just felt like my general leanings were more, I was really, really totally dedicated to tonal music. And that sort of, that was my leaning. And so eventually, happily, when I was still trying to figure out, because I really felt like I don't really want to be a theory major, and I was enjoying my piano studies so much, I had a very good jury. They thought it was very, very good. So I got an invitation to join the piano department as a piano performance person. And the rest is history. Because once I was in the department, I just decided that I loved playing so much. And I wanted to be on a higher level. I wanted to just take my playing to, the next level. So that's how it all happened.
How did you transition from I am a pianist, I'm a performance major, to getting connected with your first publisher?
Well, I want to say that there was a little interim, and that is I didn't think I was going to want to be a teacher. And so I just started teaching, and I thought, I'm going to have a year off where I really get all my repertoire ready for a master's audition. And cut to the chase, as crazy as it was, because I didn't have really dedicated students coming to me, especially at the very beginning. But I just fell in love with teaching. And so it just became a passion of mine to want to develop students. And the next link was that I saw that even for kids whose families were very casual about it and who didn't even encourage them to practice themselves, even the parents didn't encourage them, I found that the secret to inspiring and motivating students at any level was repertoire. But so important, I discovered, was repertoire for not just the beginning, but very early elementary on through really even into the late intermediate, to really prepare for masterworks. All of a sudden I realized I would love to write music that would prepare students for the masterworks. And it was like, I already was in love with William Gillock's music, and he was my initial role model because I said, wow, all of these are good pieces and they sound like music. That's what my students are loving. And then the next step was I actually did meet Mr. Gillock. And he took my music, my initial pieces, and he looked through them and wrote me a 2-page letter, tiny, because he had very small handwriting, so much stuff. But the main point of it was that he said that this is what I should do as a career. Well, those words from somebody who I thought really helped me in my journey as a teacher was forever, it still is encouraging to me. Then I sent the things off to get published, and everything came to being published a year after I met him. After that letter, I didn't want to bother him. I just thanked him for the letter, and that was it. So I did any kind of seeking out of publishing relationship on my own. My publisher, who was initially Michaelis, they took all the 5 pieces I sent them. I only had a month's notice that they told me they were going to be premiered in Detroit, where the national conference was. And I called up Mr. Gillock and I said, you gave me the heart to go on this journey. And, I told him, he came to the premiere and all that sort of thing. So it's a long story, but it was a very meaningful part of my life.
That is really cool. So I love that you had someone who was a mentor and who encouraged you and helped you to with some guidance. That is just wonderful. What are the things that kind of challenged you to continually become a better composer?
I became so dedicated to the pedagogical aspect of it. So the continuous challenge was to write well and not just comfortably, but pedagogically sound for each level that I was, writing for. I think that I started out writing for early intermediate almost exclusively, but I really didn't have any great body of work in elementary music. And that basically happily changed when my daughter was 4 years old. And I thought to myself, I don't have any sheet music that could be her first sheet music for her first recital. And I said, I have to, do something that would work for her. It was just necessity, love, and enjoyment of being a parent that just set me on this journey. And that's when I wrote my Beanbag Zoo series. And that was very, very successful and super well received. And some of the pieces that are on this new bulletin are from that series. I found that the challenge was trying to write for something. It wouldn't happen exactly. And I think that one of the lessons I've learned is to try and let moments happen. I'm not saying that you don't need skills as a composer. Obviously, that's very, very important. But I think that it helps a lot to feel moments of spark and inspiration. And I think particularly for pedagogical music, I think for students to really relate to it, there has to be a little bit of a spark that happened when you wrote it.
What does your creative process look like now? If you're working on a piece, how does it start? How does that progress? What does it look like?
It just depends on the project. And I've been so immersed of late in my museum masterpieces. Because for each series that I've done, there's almost a different process, to be honest. But just for this series, the more I wrote, the more I sought the art for inspiration and saw that just certain artworks just gave me a first idea. it's just, I've had other things where it just happens, but not totally in response to an artwork, which is like sort of it just would happen in front of the artwork itself. But I would say that that's my favorite thing in writing, is when I sort of set up a process that will help me get ideas that are in the moment inspiration. So it's not always, an artwork, but I will set up my whole self for being enmeshed. Like when I wrote Beanbag Zoo, I surrounded myself with Beanie Babies and playing with them with my daughter. And that might not sound like your traditional trained composer, but the composer in me was in me, and I'm looking for those moments of inspiration and spark. And then for myself, I feel that once in a while, Mr. Gillock, Bill Gillock, had written me in that very first letter, always be true to yourself. And he said, and even if you think something is some editor tells you that you shouldn't have that in there, you insist on it if it means a lot to you. Like he said, sometimes even if something seems too hard, but you feel like it fits the music, put it in. You've got to be true to what you think is musically sound. So every once in a while, I think that's a challenge, because I want to put in something that's a little harder, but I don't want to hurt the experience for the student. So the thing I feel as a pedagogical composer is that that's your important duty, your oath, to try and not have those moments, but sometimes they're in there just because I'm trying to be true to the necessity of the music.
I love how you talked about using artwork or even Beanie Babies as a beginning point, as some sort of structure, I believe is the word you used, to kind of guide you and kind of help focus that creativity. So in my way of thinking, that's those structures are almost a sort of restriction, saying I need to compose something that fits this work of art or that is in the character of this Beanie Baby. What role do these kinds of restrictions and structures play in your creative process?
Well, when you refer to specifically in the art, as I've been more and more enmeshed in the series, and we're going to talk a little bit about the latest two books that came out in my Museum Masterpieces. We're celebrating women artists. And I got so enmeshed in the lives of the artists in terms of just reading about them and knowing about them, that it was basically a wonderful thing, which is that it started feeling not only did the artwork inspire me, but I felt almost this wonderful joy of collaborating with the visual artists, and feeling like almost that they were there in the room with me and saying, yes, you got my feelings in here. And I think that puts some restriction if I go back and look at the artwork and I feel, no, I wrote something that's too happy for this or too sad for this or whatever, that sort of thing. So I would say that definitely is not only a restriction, it's very important in capturing the mood.
What advice do you have for people who are hoping to emulate some of your successes?
To be true to yourself, to write the kind of music that you want to write. But I would say try and pursue area of music that you love, So if you feel like you're very good at telling a story through your music, it would be maybe good to want to write film scoring. So I would say try and pursue things that you feel would reflect your talents.
That's excellent advice. You now have started your own publishing company, Catherine Rollin Music, and this is the new frontier. What are the challenges that are facing composers today in regard to digital publishing and online media?
The digital is wonderful and magnificent for reaching the whole world. Because I had a woman just maybe 2 months ago order almost everything from my website, and she was in Ukraine. And it was, so it's wonderful to be able to not worry. Even in times of war, you don't need someone to carry the book back from the US, or the shipping is so prohibitive for that sort of thing. So I think digital in so many ways opens up the world. And I think that the only obvious challenge is the photocopying problem of music, and people almost being hostile to the idea of having to pay for music. And so, that's a very unfortunate thing. And I think that we all have to understand that in order to, pay our bills, we have to be paid for our work. Because we all think things like YouTube are free, but they're not really free because you're bombarded with ads and that sort of thing. But people start thinking that music is free. I think the things that inspire the human being and the human spirit are what make, everybody has their own way of coming to how they discuss it. I call it like having a spark or an inspiration, but it's almost, I feel that there's an intuitive thing in human beings that's a very physical thing. It's like from my gut, I feel this, from my heart, I feel this. And I don't think AI can create that. And I feel like if we keep not supporting musicians, we're going to turn into just getting AI. And, somebody could say, well, that will be what people deserve. But I think that sometimes in just innocence, people don't understand and treasure the creative arts. And so that's the danger of digital. I would just say that my career has been a musical journey that so many things happened really accidentally, just by exploring and being open and just trying to figure out. I happened upon things that were really, the things ended up coming to me, and they just happened. And I think that, especially in the creative arts, it's good to, I think, be open-minded and not have yourself wedded to one goal. And of course, obviously, the more clear-headed you are, maybe it helps you get to your goal faster. But I think, at least for myself, I found that being open-minded and just seeing what happened, or at least being open to things that happened, that it helped me a lot.
I absolutely love that. I love all of that. And it's something that I frequently talk with students about who tell me they want to pursue a career in music, that you can't just do one thing and say, I'm going to ignore everything else, because it might be the thing that you really love, the thing that you are best at, the thing that makes your life wonderful is something that you haven't even considered yet. So staying open to those possibilities and open to what the universe brings to us sometimes is a really good path to success. So thank you so much for saying that. That is awesome. And Catherine Rollin, thank you so much for being with us here today. My guest has been Catherine Rollin. You can find her awesome publications at catherinerollinmusic.com. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.